Good afternoon. Before we begin the extra practice for today, I wanted to review a couple of the lessons that we have already covered. So the daily routines, the adverbs, the times that we use the adverbs, and also using do and does. Whenever we are creating regular sentences or oraciones normales, we need to have a subject, a sustantivo, and a verb, a verbo. We also have to complete our idea, so completar la idea. We need all of these things to make a sentence. So for example, Patricia reads the book. That's a pretty simple sentence. It's saying that Patricia lee el libro. She's reading the book. Routines, however, have times. Tiene tiempo. Las rutinas tiene tiempo. So el tiempo que normalmente haces la actividad. So Patricia reads the book every Tuesday at 10. That's a routine. She does that every single Tuesday at 10 o'clock. Sometimes you can even add an adverb to that routine to say how often she does it. Con cuál frecuencia hace la actividad or la rutina. So Patricia always reads the book every Tuesday at 10. Patricia sometimes reads the book every Tuesday at 10, or Patricia never reads the book every Tuesday at 10. So this is all the stuff we've already talked about. We already know all this stuff. Now what happens if we put does or do in these routines? If we wanted to use does, but not be a question, just using does regularly, we would say something like, Patricia does always read the book every Tuesday at 10. This is not a pregunta, not a question. No es una pregunta. Es algo que está confirmando el tiempo que Patricia hace su rutina. So the routine. In other words, Patricia, we're saying she does this routine at this time always. Yes, she does. Está confirmando that she's doing this. It's not a question. So the correct way to form a question is using does or do in the beginning of the sentence. Necesitamos empezar la oración con does or do. For example, does Patricia always read the book every Tuesday at 10? Okay, since we started, empezamos la oración, since we started the sentence with does, that means that this is a question. So we need to put the question mark at the end of this new sentence we created, the question. Every single time we use does at the beginning, or cuando empezamos una oración with does, we always have to put the question mark. The same thing also happens with do. Whenever we use the word do, we have to do the same thing. But Patricia is una persona, one person by herself. So we have to use does. We're talking about someone else. In this case, if we wanted to use do, we cannot say do Patricia. Why? Because Patricia is one person. Nada más es una persona. So no podemos decir do Patricia always read her book. That doesn't work. We have to say do with at least two people. They, ellos, ahí. So do Patricia and Alex always read the books every Tuesday at 10. Esa es una pregunta que usa do, and it's using do correctly because we have two people, dos personas. Puedes usar do con tres personas o cuatro personas o 10,000 personas o 100 personas, pero es alguien más. It's someone else over there. So this is a very small review of using do and does from the previous lesson, as well as the routines and adverbs. Now, I want you to notice something. Notas algo. With the question here, does Patricia always read the book every Tuesday at 10? And the second question, Do Patricia and Alex always read the books every Tuesday at 10? The do and the does is different. They are different depending on the question. However, the verb read, leer, is always the same. Cada vez. When it's does, we say read. And when we say do, it's also read. This is an important rule. So when you're asking a question, cuando estás dando una pregunta, o cuando estás preguntando algo con does or do in inglés, we have to leave the other verb by itself. Does Patricia always read the book every Tuesday at 10? Does Patrick always clean the house on Wednesdays at 7? Does Alex always clean his house at 10? These are all examples of using does or do with a verb, and that second verb does not change. So it's really, really important to remember that we do not want to add an S to these second verbs. And why do we not want to add an S to the second verb? Like, we did that before. I remember that we had to make certain things like speaks or speak or clean or cleans. So why are we not doing that here? The reason is because these are questions. They are preguntas. And these questions are using does or do. Does and do are both verbs. Son verbos. And do is a verb that doesn't use the S, and does is the verb that has the S. You see, it has an S right there. So we've already used the S. We've already added the S when we needed to. So in this case, we added the S to do. So does, because we're talking about one person. Patricia, ahí, allá, esa persona, una persona ahí. And with do, we did not add an S because we're talking about Patricia and Alex, two people over there. Again, look at the chart. If we're talking about one person somewhere else, he or she, we have to add an S. So we did for do, which becomes does. But when we talk about two people like they, ellos, then we do not add an S, so we leave it the same as do. That means that the second verb stays exactly the same. Es la misma or el mismo verbo en cada pregunta. It doesn't matter if it's using does or do. Now that we've had some extra practice with or review with the lessons, let's have extra practice with the daily routines and the stuff that we have learned in the previous lessons, specifically when it comes to does or do. So for exercise 1, I'm going to read out the questions so you can hear me say the sentences or the questions correctly. And I want you to, on a separate sheet of paper, en otro papel, write out the answers. Okay? So, in exercise 1, box 1, does Rosa arrive at 9 a.m.? Does Rosa arrive at 9 a.m.? Number 2, does Alicia take a break at 12:15 p.m.? Does Alicia take a break at 12:15 p.m.? 3, do they leave work at 5 p.m.? Do they leave work at 5 p.m.? 4, does she come home at 7 p.m.? Does she come home at 7 p.m.? So I want you to write the answer, la respuesta, on a separate sheet of paper, the way it's shown here. So for number 1, does Rosa arrive at 9 a.m.? We would say something like, yes, she does. Yes or no. She, Rosa, does. You could also say something like, yes, she does arrive at 9 a.m. That is longer, but it's not incorrect. It's actually correct. So you could say, yes, she does, or yes, she does arrive at 9 a.m. Both are correct, just the longer one is more specific. It's more specific and it gives more information. Go ahead and do exercise 2 as well. So complete the conversations. Completa las conversaciones en otro papel. You have to use the correct do or does, and you also have to use the correct verb. So make sure that you remember the review that we did and the instructions and lessons that we had in previous videos to answer these questions. Let's have some more practice with pronunciation, okay? This is exercise 3. So I'm going to say these questions, las preguntas, and I want you to repeat them. Repetir las oraciones, las preguntas, so we can have some more practice speaking, hablando, okay? So A1, does he take classes on Thursday? Does he take classes on Thursdays? Does she arrive at 7 a.m.? Does she arrive at 7 a.m.? Number 3, does she take a break at 1 p.m.? Does she take a break at 1 p.m.? Number 4, does he come home at 9 p.m.? Does he come home at 9 p.m.? I'm going to read out the sentence, and I'm going to say both of these questions, both preguntas, with he and she, just for practice, okay? And I want you to repeat with me, para practicar hablando, okay? So, does he drive a car? Does she drive a car? Does he go to school? Does she go to school? Does he work on Saturdays? Does she work on Saturdays? Does he ride the bus? Does she ride the bus? So that was some practice for pronouncing the questions. So go ahead and review the video or rewind the video si quieres practicar más. For this final activity, I want you to listen. Escucha las oraciones que yo digo. And I want you to listen and then use those those sentences that you hear to answer the questions. Dar las respuestas para las preguntas. Okay? So, I'm going to go ahead and start reading. Hi, Kristen. How are you? No, I'm pretty good. Thanks, Mike. I'm very busy these days, though. Oh, really? Yes, I have a new job. I'm a sales clerk at Shoe World. I arrive at work every morning at 8 and I leave at 6. Huh, that's a long day. Do you take a break? Yes, I take a lunch break at 1. Oh, that's good. And I take a class in the evening. Really? Do you eat dinner? Yes, I go home and eat dinner at 7. My class is at 8. Oh, you are busy. Okay, so that was a practice conversation between a person named Kristen and another person named Mike. So go ahead and rewind that part of the video so you can answer the questions. For exercise 4, write down all of the answers to the questions. So what time does Kristen do these things? And then for the final part of this lesson, for exercise 5, write down the full answer, la respuesta completa para estas preguntas, perdón. So for exercise 4, what time does she arrive at work? Well, she said she arrived at work at 8 a.m. So we put 8 a.m. for the time. And for exercise 5, when the question is asking, Does Kristen arrive at work at 9 a.m.? Well, no. We just said she came in at 8. So we say no, she doesn't. She arrives at 8 a.m.